Stephanie.
And I'm Allison.
And this is Nerd of the Week, a randomly generated fandom podcast. Allison, shall we ask the generator what our word is this week?
Yes, please. Generator.
The word of the week is merchant.
And our quickly looked up definition for merchant is a person or company involved in wholesale trade, especially one dealing with foreign countries or supplying merchandise to a particular trade. I feel like a lot of these have the definition or the word in the definition, but that's okay. Basically, someone who sells things to another person.
Yes. That is perfect. All right, so if I'm not mistaken, I go first this time.
I believe that's true.
Alrighty. Well, you may or may not be familiar with this, but what I'm bringing to the table today is the 1962 film of the Music Man musical.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen the film and or just the musical itself?
I am aware of it. I believe I saw it once as a high school production that my husband was actually in, and I didn't know it at the time.
Oh, fun.
I'm aware of the thing. I know the music. I don't actually know the plot very well.
All right. Well, I'll tell you all about the plot, and I won't sing any of the songs.
Perfect.
All right. So when it came out in 1962, it was actually based on the 1957 Broadway musical that was written by Meredith Willson. And when it came out in that 1962 year, it was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. It did win some things for the actual music and basically the scoring of the music. And then it won a Golden Globe for Best Musical Picture that year. So it did very, very well. Very well loved. It stars Robert Preston as Harold Hill, who is the main character, and Shirley Jones as Marion Peru. And these were actually part of the Broadway cast. Oh, actually a lot of the cast who's in the movie was part of the Broadway cast to begin with. So they knew the roles already, they'd kind of perfected them. And I feel like that kind of makes for it being a little bit better almost, because they knew how to be that character really well.
Yeah.
But apparently, Robert Preston almost didn't have the role because the producer who made the movie likes to have bigger Hollywood stars actually have those main roles in his musicals that he produced. Just because, it'd sell more if you see a big name rather than just some Broadway guy. So the role was actually offered to Bing Crosby, who turned it down, and Cary Grant, who also turned it down. And apparently Grant said that he would actually only see the film if Preston had the role. He didn't feel anyone else could do it. So he just wanted Robert Preston to have it. Apparently Frank Sinatra was also considered, but overall, everyone basically wanted Preston. So Robert Preston got to be Harold Hill, which is what I'm hoping to call him for the rest of this podcast.
Sounds good.
There's lots of names in there. But anyway. So the film opens up kind of as a traditional musical does with an ensemble sort of song. There's a train car and it's full of these traveling salesmen. They all have their big briefcases that they carry around full of their goods. And they sing this kind of song that goes clickety-clack with the train. And it's kind of a cool concept. And they're all, bouncing around on the bouncy train. And the song that they're singing is about the hardships of their industry and how it's hard for them to make any money. And then they talk about this guy named Harold Hill, who's also making it harder for all of them because he's kind of a cheat and basically people run him out of town and then don't want to see any other traveling salesman ever. So he quote, doesn't know the territory and doesn't really know how to stay in his lane there. And then the next stop is going to be River City, Iowa. The conductor comes through the car, and the salespeople are saying, none of us are getting off here because nobody can sell in Iowa. But then one guy jumps up and says, gentlemen, I think I'll try. And the one salesman says, I don't think I caught your name. And he says, oh, I don't believe I lost it. And he shows his briefcase, and it's Harold Hill, the Music Man. He jumps off the train before any of them can stop him. And then the train, of course, continues on, and here is Harold Hill in River City, Iowa. He tries to say hello to people, but everyone's like real standoffish. They sing a song about Iowa, and they call it Iowa because that's apparently how they like to pronounce it, but only they can, no visitors. So Harold isn't allowed to say Iowa. But they basically say, we don't really like having people here. We're our own people. But then, like, the final bit of the song is, you really ought to give Iowa a try. It's kind of silly, mixed messages here. But anyway, so he is going to give it a try. And he tries to kind of make friends with people at first. And they're all like, ugh, we don't know about this. But then he comes up with an idea to sell his concept, which is selling marching bands, basically. So he has to come up with that there's trouble right here in River City. So trouble starts with T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool, because there's a new pool hall in town, and he wants all of the mothers to be concerned that their poor little boys are going to go wasting away after school at the pool hall. And so instead, they should join the marching band, because that's a good, respectable thing for them to do. And everyone's oohing and ahhing like, yeah, that is a great idea. So everyone's kind of like buying into the idea. But the mayor actually owns the pool hall, and he's trying to get the school board to investigate Harold Hill for his credentials. Another person who's going to try and look into Harold Hill is the town's piano instructor, who's Marion. He tries to ingratiate himself with her because he's actually really worried that she's not going to like his methods. And she's just not having it. She's not buying any of his flirtations. She's kind of standoffish about love, and it sounds like she's had some sort of love interest in the past who sounds like abandoned her or something like that. So she's fed up and sick with love. So she's really gonna set it to this Harold Hill. She's gonna look into his credentials. What he's trying to say is his method of teaching, because she's asking him, like, well, how do you teach them music? And he says that he has the patented think method, which is basically you think about what you want to play, and then you can play it, which kind of, as a side note, is actually how the Suzuki violin method kind of works. But there's a little bit more to it than just thinking. You have to, like, actually practice still. But it's kind of the same thing, where you don't actually, like, learn to read music. But
you just believe you can.
Oh, kind of. So that's his patented method of teaching the music.
That's a hard word.
It is. It really is. So then we see several other little interactions around the town of Harold trying to get people to buy instruments for their sons. And it really actually kind of works. Everyone's buying up the instruments. He's got trombone players and piccolo players, and then he's still trying to get in with Marion, but it's not working. But her mom's like, you really should give him a try. Everyone deserves a chance or something. Harold actually has made friends with the mother, as well as Marion's younger brother, Winthrop, who is kind of this like sad, shy little boy. But he says, I think you'll be a great cornet player. You're perfect to play the cornet. And so he's like really hyping up the little brother and like actually makes him feel good about himself. And so that's why Marion's mother is like really into this guy. She's like, wow, he's like being so nice to us all. I think this is a really good thing for our town. And kind of what seals the deal for everyone that he's not just like a fly-by-night salesman is that the Wells Fargo wagon comes to town. And boy, they're all hyped about that. And in the Wells Fargo wagon delivery is all of the instruments and all of the shiny uniforms that the band will wear. So it's like, it's real. Everyone's excited. They're going to have a marching band. It's great. However, we're coming up to the Summer Jubilee Festival kind of thing. I think it's the Ice Cream Social is what they call it. And Marion asks Harold to meet her at the footbridge. Apparently, Marion has looked into his credentials and found out that he was a fraud, because he claimed to be from the Gary Conservatory of '05, but the town of Gary didn't even exist until '06, so she knows he's fake. But she's like, but I couldn't expose you because look how happy you've made everybody. You've given us hope and something to think about. And also she kind of loves him at this point. And while all this is happening, another salesman comes to town. It's one of the salesmen who is on the train to begin with. And he goes right to the mayor and exposes what Harold is going to do. That basically, once he gets all the final money for the instruments and the uniforms paid off, that he's going to skip town and there's not going to be a band.
Oh, no.
And so there's this angry mob, and Marion and a few other people who are on his side try and get him to leave. And he's like, well, I used to want to run, but now I found I've got my foot stuck. Because he doesn't want to leave Marion. He loves her too, and it's so sweet. And so he lets himself get caught by the mob, and they want to tar and feather him. But first they take him into, like, the courthouse or whatnot. And the mayor's reprimanding him and pointing out to the people, like, look at all the money he's stolen from you. But right then, all the little kids come in with their instruments and dressed up in their uniforms, and they line up, and they try and play the minuet in G by using the think method, and it sounds absolutely terrible. Like the epitome of like 5th grade band students who just got their instruments and are learning how to play, and it sounds terrible. But all of the townspeople who have their kids in the band, they're like, look, that's my Jimmy, look at him. And they're just so happy that their kids are like actually doing this, and they can see this image in the future. And everyone agrees, like, oh gosh, we should let him go. It's fine. And so everything turns out okay. He ends up marrying Marion, it's inferred, and he leads the parade, and everybody, like, at that point, it's the ending, and they can play their instruments. Apparently the think method worked. Or maybe Marion taught them all how to play.
Maybe she was just like, I'm gonna help this guy out.
Yeah. But they play this magnificent reprise of the title theme, 76 trombones, and everyone's happy, and everything ends wonderfully.
Aww.
So it's a real cute, mid-20th century musical.
Yeah.
It's kind of exactly what you'd think it would be. I think what's kind of good about this story is there's not a whole lot of misunderstandings like a lot of musicals are based on. You know how it's
sure.
One person like says something, but it's completely misunderstood by another. And then it's just like this whole series of events. And if they would have just talked to each other, it would have been fine.
Right.
And this one's not like that. It's like Harold is purposely trying to deceive everybody. And like it kind of works better. And I feel like the story is more believable in that way. And less kind of like, just get on with it. Like I feel some musicals are.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So I feel like this one has like a better plot. And I don't know, it's just real nice. I like the music things. So this really struck a chord with me when I first saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember it. I remember liking it, and I feel like I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again.
I will say,
like a fun time.
The music is super catchy. Like sometimes I'll just have random songs from it pop into my head. I think I used to watch it a lot when I was little. Like it was on TV a lot, so I would see it. And eventually I even owned it on DVD. So yeah, it's very ingrained into my head. But it's not bad. The music is, I would say, not bad.
That's good.
Yeah. I do have a little bit of trivia for you for this one.
Okie pokey.
All right, so we said that Marion is the piano teacher, but she also has another job. So what is that job? Is she the librarian? Does she work at the soda fountain? Or does she run her family's farm?
Is she the librarian?
Yeah!
Yeah!
She is Miss Marion, the librarian. There's a whole song about that.
There's like something in like the back reaches of my mind that remembers Miss Marion, the librarian.
Next. How does Harold Hill evade being questioned by the school board? So, does he break out into song and dance? Does he turn the questions back around at them? Or does he teach them to sing?
I feel like the correct answer, even if it's not, is just to sing at them. Like, you're asking me these questions I don't have the answer to. What if I just sing and confuse you? So I'm gonna go with the first one.
Okay, you're really, really close. He teaches them to sing. So it's basically, there's 4 of them, and they're actually played by a barbershop quartet. that like that's what they cast. And so he first like says to them as one of them is talking, he's like, "Oh, you have a beautiful tenor voice." And he says like, "Can you just say that a little bit slower?" And so the guy like starts talking with his questions, but like really spreading out the words so that it's a song. And then they just like break out into 4-part harmony. And so every
Classic
time they're
redirect.
like, exactly. And every time they try and question him again, he just like kind of starts singing and they pick it up and then just leave him alone.
Excellent.
Yep. All right, and a final question here. What is Marion's younger brother, Winthrop, self-conscious about? Is it his height, the color of his hair, his lisp, or his big teeth?
His height.
No, it's his lisp.
His lisp. Oh, no.
The poor boy. And he has this, like, little romantic interest as well, whose name is Amaryllis. But he can't say her name because it has an S in it. So he says Amaryllis, and then she thinks it's the funniest thing, but he feels so bad about it.
Aw, that's really cute.
But that's why he plays the cornet, because it has no S's.
Fair. Totally fair.
Yeah.
As someone who struggles with a lisp, I can understand that.
You know, I would never know. You'd hide it well.
My mom put me into acting classes so that I would learn how to enunciate. But when I'm very tired, you can tell.
Well, that's fun.
I mean, it worked.
Yeah. So that was my merchant. The merchant of music, the music man.
I think that's beautiful. I think that fits really, really well.
Thank you.
Quick mid-podcast announcement. We do have a Twitter handle. You can reach us at Nerd of the Week and use the hashtag Nerd of the Week or hashtag Nerd of the Week podcast to tell you what you thought and what you would talk about with the word that we choose for this week's podcast. Or you can add us like my mother, but you know, it is what it is. And then I have a quote using the word for you, Allison.
All right.
Are you prepared to listen with your ears?
My ears are all open.
Your ears are open.
All two of them.
Good. Now, said our host, merchant, as God may you bless, since you know so much of that art, full-heartedly I play you tell us part.
All right.
So
I think I have an idea about this one.
Solid. So we'll get to it at the end of the podcast, give you some time to think about it, and then we'll reveal the answer.
And remember, you can play along at home.
Play along at home. Send us a tweet. Ask what it is before you get to the end of this podcast and let us know.
Right. We better receive a lot of live tweets.
Live tweet. Please don't live tweet our podcast.
All right. So I'd love to hear about what you brought.
Yeah. So mine's kind of a little bit of a thinker. So I was kind of trying to find one that would work with this, and I settled on Skyrim.
Okay.
Partially in the hope that, Skyrim Elder Scrolls 6 would finally come out after 10, 12, 15 years. We've been waiting for a while, Bethesda, and we'd like to see the next game.
Should Nerd of the Week at Bethesda about this?
No, I think everyone already is. Instead, they just re-released Skyrim. This time it's got fishing in it.
Is that the tagline? Skyrim. This time it's got fishing.
I honestly think that's a meme right now because, so Skyrim came out when I was in college. I think it was like 2011. And it was like a big deal at the time because it was the newest video game in the Elder Scrolls series, and Oblivion was a smash hit before that. It was also a really awesome game. Then Skyrim came out, and then like they re-released Skyrim for like the Legendary Edition, which most video games get Legendary Editions now, and then they re-released Skyrim with the ability for people, if you had it on the computer, that like fans could mod it. It made it really, really easy to like have player insert games where they could mod and change the game and all that stuff.
I have seen a few things on YouTube of people modding the game to be absolutely ridiculous.
It's so much fun. The game mods are almost better than the game itself.
So funny.
So it's it's a really solid video game. And then we kept waiting, and they were like, oh yeah, the next one's coming, don't worry. We'll probably go to Tamriel, which is another area in this world. Then they re-released Skyrim again, and then it was on the Switch. and then the new E3 a couple years ago, they were like, look, Elder Scrolls 6, and it was just like this vague action shot. And then Skyrim VR came out instead, and we're like, what? Where's 6? So this is my plea. I'm going to talk about your game on my podcast so that we've talked about it, and then maybe we can talk about the next one. Because we're all waiting, and we all love it. But we would really like to play something other than Skyrim.
Okay, so I don't know Skyrim. It's like I've never played it.
Okay.
The thing with me is I've never played video games, but I've watched people play video games. And
Solid.
One of my roommates in college played Skyrim, and it was a very like peaceful game, except when she was battling dragons. But like the soundtrack and the pictures. Yeah. I'm sure you're going to get into all of this, but that's my experience with it.
Perfect. So you have a little bit. You have some vague memories of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It was like one of the best games 10 years ago. It was like the biggest map that had ever been in a video game at that time. It there's all these like random events, so like you could walk across Skyrim itself and have a different experience every time you walked across the entire map.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of towns, and so like the broad strokes of it, summary. So the cool thing with Skyrim, and like a lot of my favorite video games, is you can character customize, so you can pick one of many races. And how this connects to the word merchant is there is the merchant race, the Khajiit, which are the cat people. And so I almost always play a Khajiit. Sometimes I play an elf. You start off as some character. For me, it was a Khajiit. And there's this very common meme where it's really black and dark. And then it opens up, and then one of the Nords, the natives to Skyrim, are like, oh, you're finally awake, as you've been like tied up and you're on this cart going into a small town because you illegally crossed the border into Skyrim for whatever background reason. I always came up with the thought that my character was looking for some sibling or something, but you don't get a lot of background. It's for you to decide.
A choose your own adventure.
Right. And you were mistaken for a Stormcloak, who is a rebel. There are the Nords and the Stormcloaks, and they're basically fighting for control of the country. And the first time through, you find out that like the Stormcloaks are upset because they don't want to be run by Tamriel rule. They want to be free. They want their own country to themselves. But as you go down, there's all this like systemic issues because they only want Skyrim to be for the Nords, and
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool because both sides, there's good and bads on both sides of this war. But as you come in on this prisoner cart, they are just executing the characters as they come through.
Mm-hmm.
And right when your character's about to, after you've spent probably, if you're like me, about 4 hours designing your character, because if you give me character creation, I will spend way too long creating my character. Right as your character, who you've just beautifully spent way too long designing, is getting on the chopping block, as it were, the dragon Alduin comes in and lands and starts screaming and fire everywhere, and you can escape either through the tunnels or with one of the Imperial guards to get out of that situation. From there, it kind of opens up. It's a little bit less linear past that. Typically, you end up in Whiterun, which is like the first major town, where you meet Jarl Balgruuf, who there are a lot of memes about him. And
I know. I recognize that name.
He's Jarl Balgruuf, and he be ballin'. And he's actually a pretty solid Jarl. Like, they make fun of him a lot, but, like, he actually gives a crap about Whiterun. He actually kind of recognizes that the Stormcloaks are racist, and they don't actually want what's best for Skyrim. They just want what's trendy, which is current rebellion, because Nords are kind of like the, like, big beat-em-up race where they want to just fight all the time. They're like Vikings. And they don't understand that having a trade and relations with other countries is actually in their benefit. So the Jarl's actually pretty cool for all the memes that they make fun of him. From there, you actually learn that your character is the fabled Dragonborn, who is able to do what they call shouting. And that's basically
Hey, I can shout too.
I can shout very loud.
Sorry.
Basically, it's like shouting in the dragon's the tongue of the dragon, the language.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one that you learn is Fus, or Fusroda, which is like very common in the music and trailers for it. Everyone knows that one because it's the big, important, like, major shout that, like, pushes people away from you, which, like, hashtag real goals. I would love to have a major shout that would just, like, keep people 6 feet apart from me. So then you're summoned up to the Greybeards, who are these monks that basically worship the dragons or commune with the dragons, because they also have been studying words for a long time to understand what happened with the dragons. For some background context, Skyrim's set about 200 years or so after the video game Oblivion. It's kind of a northern continent that's more like forest and snow, so like a harsher element than kind of other areas in this world, this continent of Tamriel.
Mm-hmm.
And dragons have thought to be completely extinct, other than the Greybeards, who know of one dragon, but that's kept like a heavily guarded secret. Basically, everyone believes that the dragons have been wiped out. So this appearance of Elduin is like, holy crap, dragons are back, and Elduin is kind of the bringer of the apocalypse. He's this big, scary guy.
Oh.
And so after that, the world kind of opens up. You learn all this kind of background. You don't actually get to learn about Parthenax for a while. The Greybeards are trying to decide if they trust you or not. You go into the world, and then you basically get to just play in this big sandbox. And you can side with the Stormcloaks, you can side with the Imperials. There's a bunch of different guilds that you can become a part of. My favorite bit, honestly, the best part of Skyrim is just kind of running around and running into things and finding stuff. And the game is beautiful. The Greybeards are on top of this mountain called the Throat of the World, and just looking out over it's super cool. And you, the main plot is basically getting yourself more and more powerful so that you can fight Elduin and go into Elduin's realm so that you can punch him back into Oblivion and get him to not, bring on the apocalypse.
All right.
So the
high stakes.
But in my favorite like RPG video game thing, they're like, the world is gonna end, but first I'm gonna craft 6,000 daggers because I want to up my one skill. I'll get to you. I'll come back to you. Don't you worry.
Side quest, man.
The Khajiit, who have been notoriously underrepresented, which is just a crime, are my favorite race. There's a couple of Skyrim memes that are of just like pictures of house cats that are like getting dropped into a bath or something like that, and then it's like, Khajiit is innocent of this crime, please don't murder me, like, help. Because Khajiit are commonly believed to be like thieves and assassins, and they're not always well trusted because of their natural ability for stealth. They are a merchant race, and they have like warriors too to like protect their nomadic merchants. But if you're in there, people are always just like, hey, don't steal my crap, and you're like, I was just looking, as you're absolutely stealing their crap. They come from the city of Elsewhere, which is just like the best name for a country ever. It was named because there's an old Khajiit proverb that basically said like the perfect society always lies elsewhere. And so, when they're not home, elsewhere is where they want to go, and it's a desert, and they kind of travel about the various locations of Tamriel to learn and do more things. And I know there was a Elder Scrolls Online DLC for Elsewhere, but I have not played it. I don't know anything about it. My only source material is Skyrim and Oblivion, so I will not be commenting on it.
Okay.
But
my only recollection of the Elder Scrolls Online is that one meme where there's an elderly lady sitting in front of a computer with a mouse, and it says The Elder Scrolls Online. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. That is excellent, and I have not heard that one.
I see it sometimes. It makes me giggle.
What we do know about Elsewhere is that there used to be 16 Khajiit clans that kind of covered the province, and then the outside pressures of Tamriel and like the threat of invasion forced them to kind of become more like kingdoms, and they banded together. I think clan identity and clan which tribe you hail from is still really, really important, but it's more like these groups came together so that they're kind of a country so that they could protect themselves. But yeah, so that's how I got to Merchant. It was the cat people.
It's good.
Because of course I did. There's not a lot of Khajiit side quests in the game, but there are some cool Khajiit players who, one is like part of the Assassin's Guild. There's one that you run into who is a kind of like a prophet, but not really. Like, he's one of those people that like everyone's like, no, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but then he'll like vaguely mention something and you're like, wait, did you actually know something? They're a cool race, and they give you a bunch of cool stealth bonuses, and then they let you see in the dark, which is always clutch, because, that's helpful when you're in Skyrim and there's like literal bears that show up out of nowhere trying to eat you, not excluding the actual dragons that come to try to murder you.
Are the dragons like, do they come at a certain time, or like there's a certain thing that you do that sets them off? Like triggers the game to give them to you, rather?
Yeah, so the dragons were all basically murdered by a dragon hunting guild. And they have like sacred burial grounds. And Alduin, him coming back, he has managed to call up the dragons from those burial grounds. So they're kind of scattered all over because they got wherever they were got. So they got
so they're getting got again?
They're getting got again. They, a long time ago, they got murdered by the Dragon Hunting Guild, and then they collapsed wherever they were, and then that became their burial ground. And then something with your blood and the fact that you are Dragonborn, which means you have a connection to the dragons, also helps to reawaken them. So you'll go across. Some of them have already awoken, so you'll like see one in the distance flying, and you'll be like, cool, I bet I have to go over there. That's gonna be fun. And then sometimes you just kind of walk and stumble across like a burial ground, and then you're like, oh no, and then it like pops up out of the ground, and then you're like, I'm fighting a dragon now, this is fine.
It just seems like they would come at the most inopportune
Yep.
times. Like you're just
Pretty much.
vibing, going on your little horse somewhere, and then suddenly it's a dragon, and so much for the peace and calm that you had.
Right. Yep. Is
there any way to like run away from the dragons?
You can. They will only chase you for so long, and you can get away from them, and you can hide if you increase your stealth, which is why being a Khajiit is super helpful, because they start with a higher stealth. If you increase your stealth skill, you can actually kind of duck down and hide, like in covered areas. There is like AoE where they can just like fireball all the way across the field, and you can still catch on fire, but you can get away from them if you're like, I am not prepared to fight a dragon right now.
Cool. That's good.
There's a common joke with Skyrim with the stealth skill where sometimes you'll go through and you'll like shoot a guy with an arrow and you miss, or you hit him in the head, or like in the neck, but it wasn't a headshot technically based on like the game's hitbox. Mm-hmm. So it didn't like insta-kill him, and you're not super prepared to fight a room full of like 30 guys. So you like crouch and hide, and he goes and like walks around with an arrow sticking out of him, and then he'll be like, who goes there? And then looks around. And then after a while, because he hasn't found anyone, he goes, must have been the wind, and then goes and sits down with an arrow sticking out of his body. Oh god. Skyrim's a great game.
It seems to be full of little glitches that are actually features.
Yeah, honestly, when it first came out, it was solidly like a bunch of glitches, but they were features, because like nothing, I personally never ran into anything super game breaking. It was just more like, oh, that's a mammoth that is literally flying through the sky right now. That's fine. He's not bothering nobody.
Video games are funny when they glitch.
Sometimes they're better when they glitch.
Yeah.
Very absurd. There is a side quest with a trickster god where you get a staff called the Wabajack, and it like turns people into chickens or like ridiculous things. And mine glitched and turned one guy into 100 chickens, and they followed me. Like they were trying to attack me, but they couldn't for some reason, and I had like a small army of chickens, and it was like the funniest thing. And
did it like inflict harm on other people that you were encountering later?
No, they were trying to murder me, so it was just basically me and this army of chickens who was trying to kill me, but they couldn't do any damage to me. So like, it's fine. I look like a swarm of chickens all the time.
That's funny. Good.
All right. I have a couple of questions for you. The first one, there was an actor who lent his voice to several characters in Skyrim, including the Dark Brotherhood's Festus Krax, who was this like creepy old dude, and Vigner Greymane, who was in Whiterun, who hated the Bloodborns, and they were like family feud all the time. What beloved character did this guy also voice? Was it Winnie the Pooh, Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, or Scooby-Doo?
Geez. I think Mickey Mouse, maybe?
Oh, good try. It was Winnie the Pooh.
Aw, that was my second
voice
choice.
actor. The voice actor being Jim Cummings. And when I discovered that, I was like, yes.
Did they sound at all like Winnie the Pooh?
No, not at all. Wouldn't have known until I was like going through IMDb, as you do, because you were looking up someone else, and then you're like, wait, isn't that Winnie the Pooh? How many lines of dialogue were recorded for this game? Was it 10,000? Was it 30,000? Or was it 60,000?
Oof. I mean, I know there's a lot of characters. I feel like they can't say that much. 10,000 seems like a lot already, so I feel like 10,000?
It's actually 60,000.
Oh, no!
There is so much dialogue in this game. There's so many side quests for this game. All right, last question. What is the name of the dragon on top of the mountain and leader of the Greybeards? Is it Smog, Puff, Parthenax, or Thomas?
Parthenax.
Yeah.
Who's Thomas the dragon?
Well, okay, so that's because one of my favorite mods of the game is they replace all the
Thomas
dragons.
the Tank Engine?
Thomas the Tank Engine! And if you haven't seen that YouTube video, please watch that YouTube video. It's so good.
I've seen something of that on YouTube.
And because like you're sitting there, because normally it's like this like screeching for a dragon, but instead it's like a choo choo, and then you look and you're like, what? And it's like choo choo, but louder, and then you look and it's just freaking Thomas the Tank coming at you. Like I said, the mods are almost better than the game sometimes.
Yeah, I would say so.
So my vaguely related, mildly related to Merchant nerd was Skyrim. So I hope you enjoyed my quick rendition of the game.
It was great. I'm now fully ready to go play it and win it.
I think you do excellent.
Fall off a cliff immediately. I'm so bad at video games.
You know, I don't think there's fall damage, so I think you're fine. And if there is fall damage, you just pop back up. You'll be fine.
I was trying to think of, isn't this the one where it's like when you fall off of something, it like goes black and then just you died? But I think that's Dark Souls that I'm thinking of.
That's Dark Souls. Yep. That's Dark Souls. Mm-hmm. No, this one I think you just ragdoll physics and then your body just like crumples and then like it zooms out for a little bit and then you just wake up wherever your last quick save was.
Okay.
There's nothing like so traumatizing as just you died in all capital letters. All right. So, have you thought about my merchant quote?
I have thought about it, and I want to say, since it sounds like some good poetry, and it's also some old-timey English, I think it's from Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice.
Good try. In the same vein, a little bit older than Shakespeare, though.
Oh, no. Beowulf.
I think probably younger than Beowulf.
Okay, those are the only ones I know.
It is actually from The Merchant's Tale. I believe it's the prologue of the Chaucer's Canterbury Tales.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that is right between those two that I named.
Yeah. Yeah, my knowledge of ancient poetry is not the greatest and timeline, but I believe that's how that worked.
Okay. Have you read the Canterbury Tales?
I read a decent amount of that in high school. The Mr. Wood was my 11th grade high school teacher, and he made us read like as much of it as existed as possible. I don't remember much beyond it, but I knew that Merchant was probably in there somewhere because there was The Merchant's Tale.
I see. Well, I've not read any of it. So I guess we need another word.
We do. Hey, generator, what is our word for next time?
The next word is vampire.
Vampire. Oh, man.
I already know 5 things that I'm gonna bring.
5 things. Oh, man. I've got at least 2.
Okay, that's probably an exaggeration on my part, but I won't have to think much about this one. It'll be more thinking of what do I really want to talk about.
Yeah, which one do you narrow it down to, right? So I guess we'll talk to you next time about vampire. Remember to tweet at us and let us know what you talk about for Merchant, and we'll talk to you next time about vampire.
We said that already.
Had I? Oh gosh. Oh no.
So remember to tweet at us, and then we'll talk to you.
And then we'll talk to you. Oh god.
We're spiraling.
I knew. It's fine. We're spiraling. All right. So, as always, I've been Stephanie.
And I've been Allison.
And this has been Nerd of the Week. Remember, if you don't have anything cool to say, play word association with the random word generator.
Bye.
Bye.